Because first of all, you got to ask yourself, where did mankind suddenly appear from on this planet about 250 or 300,000 years ago? Because Homo sapiens can be traced back genetically through the mitochondrial DNA and chromosomal atom. Scientists and geneticists have measured and calculated that the first Homo sapien walked the earth around 300,000 years ago, anything between 180 and 350,000 years ago. So the most common figure used is 250,000 years, that we suddenly popped up out of nowhere, and here we are. And we haven't changed that much. We're not that different from the first Homo sapiens. So what happened? How did that sudden change happen? And that does two things. It provides a very strong argument for creationists, because they say, oh, you see, man was created, suddenly appeared 250,000 years ago. And then they start throwing all the religious stuff at you. But at the same time, gives a very interesting subject for debate for archaeologists and anthropologists, because they say, well, somewhere along the way we'll find a missing link. And they've been in search of that missing link forever. Well, unfortunately they're not going to find that missing link, because there is no missing link. The step between Homo erectus, which is our most recent predecessor, and Homo sapien is anything between 20 and 50 evolutionary steps. Where are those 20 and 50 different species that would have led up to Homo sapiens? So it becomes very interesting when you start putting the scientific questions together and stringing them along and asking the questions rather than giving the answers. All you have to do is ask the questions, and you realize that the answers are not that simple. They become far more interesting and convoluted than you could have ever possibly imagined. And then you suddenly start this wonderful roller coaster ride in the research process, and you realize that everything we've been taught is a lie. You've got to basically start from scratch. Why do we teach the children that the Egyptians built the pyramids when we don't actually know? Why do we rather tell our children, well, we don't know who built the pyramids, and leave their minds uncluttered and leave them open? So when they get to the age of 25 or 35 or 45 or 65, and suddenly you throw a curveball at them and say, well, we don't know who built the pyramids. First of all, the oldest written records on planet Earth. The oldest written records on planet Earth are the Sumerian tablets. Now, Sumerian tablets talk extensively about human origins and human activity on Earth before any other documentation. The Sumerian tablets that we have, there are hundreds of thousands of them that have been found and deciphered. Many thousands have been deciphered. Not all of them have been deciphered, but now many universities have actually got Sumerian tablet translation departments. So if you go and do research now, as opposed to even when I was writing Slave Species, you'll find a lot more translations that will support this argument. It talks extensively about what happened to humans, where humans came from, and how they were created, and who created them, and what they did, and the obsession with gold, and all this kind of stuff. And that brings me to the other thing. When you start tracing back human origins, the 2 or 3 common denominators that you cannot get away from are absolutely overwhelming. And those 3 common denominators are, first of all, that you cannot separate humankind from their obsession with gold. As far back as you go, this obsession with gold has always been there. Even in Genesis 2, God already says, I will take you to the land of Eden where there's gold. The river runs through the land of Eden where there is gold. Or I'll take you to the land of milk and honey where the land is good, the water is good, and the gold is good. Suddenly God becomes this obsessive creature that wants to collect gold. Okay, so you've got to question that. So who was this God that was suddenly so lustful for gold? This creator of the universe and all things in it suddenly wants little shiny things. Come on. Okay, the next thing, the other common denominator is that slavery, as far back in human history as you can go, man has always practiced slavery. It's either enslaved others or been enslaved. Now you've got to ask yourself, where did man get that original idea of taking other people and enslaving them? When they were all created equal and all lived happily on this planet, and suddenly one group said, well, you're not good enough, we're better than you, we're going to work for us and get no money, and we're going to treat you like crap. And not only that, but God actually condones it. God gives you instructions how to treat your slaves, and that if a slave does certain things, you may actually kill your slave. It's wonderful that God will give you instructions. First of all, give me all your gold, and then if your slave misbehaves, it's okay to kill them. And then thirdly, is that in all of human history and all the mythologies, from Africa to the Americas or the European mythologies, all the way through Asia up to the Far East, the creator God in all human mythologies is the winged serpent or the flying serpent or the feathered serpent. Now you've got to ask yourself, how is that possible? How is it possible that some 10,000 BC and 5,000 BC and a long, long time ago, we can't even imagine, well, some of us can't imagine, but all these groups and pockets of civilization sprung up all over the planet. And they all shared the same creator God. They drew little pictures of him that looked the same all over the planet. And they built pyramids from America to Africa to the Near East and the Middle East, all the way through to China. There are huge pyramids in the central sort of area of China that no one is allowed to go into. It's been kept a secret for hundreds and thousands of years. Nobody even knows about those pyramids. And so it goes. And unfortunately, the deeper you get into this research, the more you realize that there's been a consistent and ongoing, underlying disinformation that's been accompanying human progress and human evolution. And as we move along and as we evolve and progress, every so often an event would happen that somehow dumbs us down, brings us back a whole bunch of notches, that we lose all previous knowledge and information of past civilizations. I mean, why is it that we've lost the knowledge of the Mayan calendar? And when the conquistadores invaded the Americas, the first thing that the Pope instructed them to do is to destroy everything those American natives had, because it was information that was far too advanced and far too important, that if who are we, where do we come from, and why are we here? Those are the three fundamental questions we need to answer. And then the fourth one that follows that is what you just asked me. Once we know all this, since we have all this information, where are we going? Where are we going to go with this? And where are we going to go with this, we can only answer once we know the answers to those first three questions. Because how can we possibly know where we're going if we don't know who we are, where we come from, and why we're here? So we can't answer that question until we have absolute answers for the first three questions. However, this becomes quite interesting, because you can, and this is also at this point and becomes a debate about our physical presence on this earth and our spiritual presence on this earth. Because you got to also realize that this is just a physical vessel for your soul and your spirit. So now, when you merge the two, the spiritual and the physical, it becomes even more interesting. Now, in Slave Species of God, I only really deal with our physical presence on earth as a species, because once you start opening the door to the spiritual argument, that's another 10 books on its own.